What's up, my brothers and sisters? Welcome to the Fireground Fitness Podcast, where we talk about all things pertaining to life on and off the fireground. Our guest today is David Blau. He is a black belt in jiu-jitsu, a state, national, and Pan Am and world champion. He is a firearms instructor, a family man, a 23-year veteran of the fire service, and just an all-around great guy. So we talk about all those things and so much more. Please enjoy the episode. Dave, thank you so much for sitting down with me, brother. I want to talk about your jiu-jitsu journey and your journey in the fire service. But before we do that, where I want to start is, where did little Dave come from? Where did you grow up?
Little Dave.
Tell me a little bit about your life, how you got to where you are.
Isn't that an oxymoron? Because I am
you were not
little.
You're a big man.
I'm husky. Yeah, that's big boned. I was born and raised in Mesa, so I'm a product of the area.
You didn't get very far.
Yeah, I know. I didn't have to go very far. I know where, I'm comfortable in my wheelhouse, and so I don't venture far from that. But I was born here, born and raised. Went to Westwood High School, graduated in 1988. I married a girl from Mountain View, which was our rival. Yeah, that was bad.
Crossing the tracks, buddy.
I still get some grief from that. And then all of my kids have graduated from Mesa High School, and so we kind of, keeping it real
right
in Mesa. So I haven't gone far, and then tried to get on with Mesa Fire Department and kind of messed up that process. I knew a lot of guys there. Obviously, that's where I had wanted. In fact, I hadn't really even thought of the fire department early on.
What turned you toward the fire service?
I had a summer job. I was a swim coach, a lifeguard, and a swim coach for the city. And I had a friend who was a cop. And back in that time, in the late 90s, there was a hiring freeze for the FBI. So I'd done a mission for my church in Japan. So I spoke Japanese.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool.
So I spoke Japanese. So I thought, oh man, the FBI is always looking for people, that speak a foreign language. And so but they had a hiring freeze. So then, all right, well, I'll be a cop, because I always thought law enforcement cops were cool. So I talked to my buddy who was a sergeant in the Mesa Police Department. I said, hey man, I want to come do a ride along. He's like, whoa, Dave, hold on. You can come do a ride along, but if I were to do it all over again, I'd be a fireman. I mean, he told me straight up. And I'm like, oh. He's like, man, everybody hates cops. Everybody loves firemen. I mean,
hey man,
it's the truth, right? Unfortunately. And so it was the best advice, some of the best life advice anybody's ever given me. And so I met somebody whose kid was on my swim team. He was on the Mesa Fire Department, and so I kind of started the process with that. It took a long time, right? I mean,
how many years after? So you came home from your mission, so you're like 21 years old?
Yeah, 21, 22. I got married early on, just like a lot of the momos do. They come home and get married quick. Started my life. I was doing international business at ASU, because again, the Japanese, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna make a killing, and make all this money, and then I'm like, nah, it's not the lifestyle I was looking for, right? And so I started the process, and got with the guys, and they're like, all right, go to MCC, start your fire science degree. So I did. I got my EMT. I got into, back then they had their own academy. They had just started their own fire academy, Fire 1 and 2. So I got into that, and
at the community, there's the 1 and 2 at the community college.
At the community college, right? Mm-hmm. But you had to have some prerequisites. So I started taking the classes just like everybody else, back then. Now I'm going to be a fireman, yeah. And did that, and I went in all like hut, and it was just kind of like coming and hanging out and playing firefighter, right? So that kind of, I'll get back to that later, kind of bit me right in the butt later on. But yeah, it was fun. It was a good experience. I'm like, oh, this is cool. And then I started testing, right? So back then, I can remember waiting all night to get apps in Peoria. Right, so we out in front of the city hall. That was the best part about being in the MCC Academy, was you were with everybody else that was trying to get a job in the Valley, and so you found out
The network.
Who was hiring?
Yeah.
Who's turning who's handing apps out and stuff.
You know what I remember doing when I first got kind of hooked on to the pathway of the job? I started by making phone calls. Remember, I had the hotlines. You'd call the city's phone line, and they would tell you if they were in a hiring process or not.
Oh, see, I didn't have to do that because I was always in class with people, and everyone say, "Hey, Phoenix is coming out on the 13th or whatever," and Mesa, and you just tested everywhere.
Yeah.
So that was the thing. You just started testing. You started kind of learning the process. You got interviews wherever you could, so you kind of, found out what that was like and kind of the buzzwords that they were looking for, and you kind of honed in on the process. So, that took about 2.5, 3 years, I would say, before I tested with Chandler, and they do their process a little differently, So I'd made it far in the process with Sun City West and Peoria, and then Chandler came up, and I made. By that time, I kind of had figured out, the process a little bit.
Approximately what year are we talking about here?
I did the MCC Academy back in '96.
Okay.
And then I think I started the academy with Chandler in 1997.
Okay.
So it was, I had already had my EMT before that, excuse me. And so I started the process with Chandler. So now Chandler was different in that they would do the process. So you had your written, and then you had your physical fitness, which by then was only 1.5 miles in 13 minutes, right? It was pass fail. And then after that, you had your first interview. And then if you passed that interview, or you had your first interview and then second interview, and then that was to get into the academy. And so they ran their own academy, and they call it an internship. And so it was you were not hired. You had an internship, and we met on Tuesday night for 3 hours, and then all day Saturday for it was like 18 weeks. It was a long time. And we didn't have our own academy, so we were in downtown Chandler in a parking garage, pulling hose in the streets. We'd have engines come down and roll hose and pull off and stuff, and run at Chandler High School. And then later on, we started going out to the MCC Academy that was out at Williams Gateway at the time, and kind of doing stuff out there. And first day we go out there, and you go out to the Connex box, and you're rummaging through all the knickknacks and trying to find boots that matched, and turnout coats that didn't have too many holes, and bunker pants without any liners,
good old
and
grinder gear.
Slapping the Black Widows out of them and stuff. It was old school. It was old school back then, man. And you just found stuff that worked, and we freaking did it. But and it was pretty intense because now you got 30 guys in an internship that are vying for 11. Back then, we were hiring pretty good, so it was 11 spots, and that's where it bit me. That attitude of coming out of the MCC Academy, thinking, "Oh, I've done this, and it's cool, and it's fun," and so
the
everybody
laissez-faire attitude at the MCC Academy.
So everybody comes in hut, and I'm like, "Hey, what's up? This is cool," and I shot myself right in the foot early on, just being a knucklehead. And finally, thank goodness, Kent Keller, he's like, "Hey, Dave, come here. Shut up, dude. Just shut up." Another great advice. Just shut up. Put your head down. Work hard. So it did take me a little while to dig myself out of that hole. I missed that first hire. So we actually had to keep doing ride-alongs once a month. We had meetings every other month, and I got hired. I was on the list.
So were you still an intern at that point?
It was I was an intern. So I had a red shirt, and I had to stay current on the list, and they had these minimum requirements. And then I got hired 10 months later, full time. So it all worked out. Yes, I was happy to be second string. But and it's been a great career. Anybody that's been doing it, they know it's awesome. So
you and I first met when you I'm not sure how far along you were in your career at that point. I'm trying to think. Pretty far along, probably.
I'm at 23 years now.
16, 17 years, I think, maybe, because it was anyways, we met in special operations. You were coming down.
Uh-huh.
I was acting as the division chief over training at the special operations, and you were coming down to get trained.
Yep, for my second time.
Your second time?
Yeah.
What was the first time?
First time I had actually went through for our TRT hazmat when it was combined. So I got a spot on an engine early on in my career. So I went down to Phoenix and got certified in both. And then I was on the TRT team for a while. But then when I tested for engineer, I got bumped off. I had to leave. Then it had lapsed and everything had changed. Our teams had split. So then I had an opportunity a couple of years ago to get back on it.
So that's interesting. It's kind of some agencies do it a little bit differently, right? So in my agency, once you have the certification, as long as you maintain your CEs, you maintain the spot, and you might leave a truck that is a special operations truck and go work anywhere in the city as a rover, or take a spot somewhere else or whatever, and you maintain your credentials. And I know a lot of jurisdictions don't do that.
Yeah, no.
Like if you leave that truck, you're out of the team.
You're not getting your pay, obviously, while you're off assignment.
Well,
right?
in my jurisdiction, you do.
Oh, Phoenix!
I know,
you suckers.
Well, so the argument
the
argument has always been that, hey, if you are going to maintain your credentials and you're on an apparatus, wherever you are, you still have that skill set, and you bring that talent to the game.
No, that makes sense. That makes total sense. That would be awesome. I mean, I've been off the team, but I still have my gear, and they'll allow me to keep the cert for a year.
Yeah.
And so that way, that if they need somebody, they can always pull me back in.
Well, and that's what we do as well. Yeah. So when you have, we'll use them as move-overs. If you're a certified TRT captain or firefighter or whatever, and we need a guy on a special operations truck for the day, we'll call you up and say, hey, Dave, we need you to come on over, and you'll slide on over for the day.
And that's good because I still get my 7.5%. So that's a little nice bump for the day.
So what are some other cool things you've done in your career? So hazmat, TRT.
So yeah, I mean, I went early on. I liked the medical side, obviously, of the fire service, and so I put myself through medic school. So that was before we, as a department, tested and ran our own program. So I think I was only on a year, almost 2 years, and I decided to go to medic school. So I went through Orchid Lopez, if you remember that name. She was long time ago, and you paid for it out of pocket. And it was, back then it was still like $2,800. It was a lot of money for a newlywed who wasn't making any money, right? I think I think I started at $23,000 a year, right? I was poor as crap, and so went on my own. Had to use my own vacation or trade, it took me almost, I want to say like 10 months. It was a long program, 2 times a week kind of a thing, and then I tested, got my my national registry, and then when the department had a need, they would put you in it and then reimburse you for the cost of the lowest school that was out there, but not books and not my time. So I blew all my time, but I became a paramedic. That was fun.
How long was your program?
It was like, I want to say it was 8 to 10 months.
Yeah, I think
of just class.
Was 11 months.
Yeah, and then your ride-alongs and your clinicals and all that other stuff. Oh, and it was such a pain, but it paid off. And now, gosh, the stuff that the guys have to go through in Chandler, it's very competitive. We have a lot of people test. It's a long process, and it's a lot better system. They come out being a lot better paramedics out of school than I was, for sure.
What's one of the differences that you think adds value?
In what way?
Well, how are they coming out as better paramedics?
I just think the quality. I mean, nothing against Orchid back then, but she'd come in and kind of like, okay, today we're going to talk about Beck's triad. And I didn't know what was, and I'm like, oh, okay, and it was bouncing around. There was not a lot of continuity, and for my knucklehead brain, it was hard to follow. So I think that the way that our department, most departments or most programs have it, you start with your anatomy and physiology, and then you work and you figure out the body systems, and it's just, it makes more sense, right? And they require more. I mean, it was, you got to maintain a certain percentage. She was all about the paycheck. And don't worry about it. It'll make sense later. I make good street medics. She was helping you to pass the national registry.
Right.
And then really the rest of it was kind of on the job. And luckily I had some good mentors that kind of helped me along and hold my hand and be like, hey, knucklehead, don't do that.
Yeah. It's interesting. The process of educating adult learners. There's a science to it, and I think that's something that we don't necessarily apply it in the fire service. We're like, hey, I have a skill set. I'm going to hand that skill set to you. You're going to take it from there, and we're not measuring learning. We're not measuring the learners' takeaways very well. We're not terribly good at curriculum development, right? Like we're just like, hey, this is what we're going to do today. I just thought this up 10 seconds ago, and we don't really put down learning objectives and develop curriculum in a meaningful way.
Right.
And
our department's done a great job at that now. I mean, they got some really smart guys and that have it down. And it's a good thing I did it then, because if I tried to learn anything now, oh man, my brain just doesn't work as good as it used to. For sure.
Yeah, I don't think I have the intestinal fortitude to get through medic school today.
And we have the same connection through jiu-jitsu, right? I mean, just because you are good at jiu-jitsu or just because you're a good medic doesn't necessarily mean you're a good instructor.
Yeah.
So you got somebody who, man, they can slam that IV and they just boom, boom, boom. And then when we ask a question, well, how do you get out of side control? Well, don't get there. That's the stupidest answer ever. Hey, why did you give that? Because they needed it. Well, so just because you're really good at something doesn't mean you're really good at,
right.
You're a good instructor, can help other people learn or have a style that is conducive to that.
What's
learning,
funny,
right?
And conversely, what's interesting to me about that is you'll hear people critique instructors. Well, that guy's, they have no credentials. They suck. They've never been, a world champion, or they're, I've seen that guy in the field, he's not that great of a firefighter.
Yeah.
And so their street cred might be low. I go, yeah, but they're an academic, and they know the information in a very detailed way, and their ability to articulate it back to you so that you understand it. And of course, I'm speaking very broadly here.
Sure.
But
I also think conversely, I absolutely agree with you. I think conversely, though, something that we see now, especially online, is you get all these people, well, I have a degree in this, and I am this smart, and I went to school for this long. You know what? I don't think that education is necessarily a good indicator of intelligence.
No,
I know a lot of
education is about process.
I know a lot of people that have a lot of things behind their name, and they're they're idiots just because somebody went to school for a long time, or even is a you've seen it in the medical. Yeah. We bring people in, patients in, and you come into this ER at a level 1 trauma center, and you're given a report, and you've been busting your butt, right, to keep this patient alive and trying everything, and there's blood everywhere, and you guys are, there's 4 of you in the back of an ambulance, and it's running code 3, and you're trying not to fall on each other and trying to start IVs, and you got blood and puke and poop and everything all over, and you're doing the best you can, right? And sometimes, obviously, that works out better than other times, but you come in, and this person still has a heartbeat, and you've been busting your butt for, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 minutes since the beginning of the call.
Right.
And you come into this ER, why isn't this person C-collared? Why? And immediately starts pulling out, the checklist of things that you didn't do. And you're like, dude, I've been busting my butt here.
Right.
And this is the first thing that you're going to come at me with? Screw you. And they have no knowledge of what we do as firefighters, right?
Well, it's a lack of common sense, right? So they're saying, hey, here's the checklist of items that were supposed to be done in the algorithm.
Right.
Right. Well, hey, when I'm bouncing in the back of an ambo, that's unrealistic. And in perfect sterile conditions, we would have had all those things done.
For sure.
But the reality on the ground is totally different. It's
perspective, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because he's always learned in a well-lit, sterile, nice environment. Hey, give me a 7.5 and a 14 French, and and somebody magically hands him stuff, and he can see I'm lying in blood and vomit and trying to, get an airway here.
Right.
And he's never experienced that. So it's easy for him to criticize.
Right.
And then trying to maintain your professionalism. And now I'm to the point in my career. It's like, dude, don't even come at me. Come on, come at me.
See these gray hairs? This happened for a reason.
I'm going to choke you out in about 2 seconds.
Well, there's that too, right? So going back to the thing about education, this is an interesting conversation because people talk about education in the fire service and should firefighter, there's a divide, right? Some firefighters say, hey, advanced education is important, and some firefighters are like, no, the knowledge, skills, and abilities you develop on the job through training is the most important. And the reality is that I think it has something to, there's something to be said for both, right?
For sure.
Academic education, the beauty of it is you're learning processes. You're learning how to do research and you're exercising that bone. Just like if you were to go out and do TRT training and, hey, we're going to shore up a trench, and we're actually doing the skill set and building the muscle memory and the reps. Same thing happens when you're doing an educational process. You're writing papers, you're getting them critiqued, and you're learning how to rewrite and write again, and conduct research. And what is the value in the research? Sure. Because, man, you can skew the crap out of some numbers.
Right.
So
I think we see that, right?
Yeah.
We see that with follow the science, and you got all these people saying different things with who do you.
So the beauty of it, though, comes in the application. Right? If you can take your education and apply it meaningfully in the world of operations.
For sure. And I think I think firefighters are a different breed, because a unique breed, right? Because we have these type A personalities, these hard chargers that can problem solve, right? Because nothing ever frickin' goes right on a fire
100%
scene.
No.
Never. Or on a call or in the back of an ambulance. You're just like, you go to suction and the frickin' thing doesn't work, right? But you checked it off that morning. I mean, how does that happen? But it inevitably it happens. So the good firefighters that are money, right? They're the ones that adapt and can figure stuff out. All right, let's go to plan B, plan C, and they don't get hung up, right? I've seen really intelligent guys that can spout out the drug calculations and the algorithms, and man, they're on mentally, right? They're there, and I can't frickin' add 2 and 2, but they can't get past plan A.
Right.
Now what do I do?
Right.
And they freeze up, or what do I do now? It's not working. And to be able to roll with the guys that I think that are the best and the best are guys that can kind of mesh that, right? That they're smart, but yet, and they've done the education. You can't get past. You can't fake the knowledge, right? The learning of knowledge. But those guys that can apply that and adapt it to real world circumstances when the crap hits the fan, and move on, and those are the guys that are money. And then the experience, right? I mean, some of the most valuable lessons I've learned, whether it's jiu-jitsu or whether it's extrication training or whether it's paramedicine, it's the guys that have been doing it for 15, 20, 30 years that are like, dude, no, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Or here you go. Focus on this.
So
that's the best. That's helped me.
I think it's interesting too is that there's folks out there who are not paying attention, right? So they have 1 year of experience repeated 15 times, right? Versus the folks who are constantly willing to learn.
Sure.
And they're humble, and when they have they'll talk about calls after the fact, and they'll walk through some of the lessons learned. Hey, what did we do well? What went poorly? And gosh, you get every single incident you've ever been on, you can sit down and have that conversation. Because
that's why we have a tailboard critique,
well,
right?
And we talk about that a lot. And do we do it every single time with any kind of fidelity?
We used to, but now I agree. Yeah. I think we've got away from it a little bit, right?
Well, how many tailboards have you been at where people come out and the boss will come out and go, hey, that went great. Fire's out. Everybody's safe. And I'm like, well, hold on. There was some issues, the way we dumped the hose in the front yard, that probably could have been smoother.
Right, but you don't want to be that guy like, hey, why are you throwing me under the bus? And you get that, you get egos, right? It's tough.
That's a funny point you bring up, because as hard charging as we are, how fragile can the egos be?
Well, that's why firemen all drive big trucks to protect our egos and other fragile things, right? Yeah, for sure. I'm with you.
And I parked in the shadow of your monster truck, by the way.
I'm compensating for a lot of things, okay?
Right.
But at least I'm not embarrassed to talk about it.
There you go. Own it. Own your stuff. Your own insecurities.
Yeah.
Well, so the tailboard, let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
There's so much value in having honest and real conversations about learning. And I think you got to take your ego and set it aside and say, no matter what, if you truly value your skill set as a firefighter, that means every day you come to work, you're learning something new, particularly when we go on an event. And if you make a mistake, own it.
Sure.
Right. And then figure out, because there's some young firefighter there watching you going, oh, that's okay.
Right.
It's okay to take that kind of shortcut or make a mistake like that and get away with it.
Do you think here, I just want to get your opinion. Do you think it's changed over the years, that we've gotten better or worse with accepting or dishing out that critique? Because I think we've gotten better.
Yeah, I think we have those conversations. I don't know. I honestly don't feel that people are willing to be vulnerable with each other, right? And I think that there's a, and maybe this is an organizational thing, or maybe it's just
I don't know.
Maybe my little
I think
circles.
we're better. I think in Chandler, I think we're better. I mean, it used to be, that whole conversation that we had in the academy is like, okay, here's the ocean. Here's the fish, here's the whales, here's the fish, the whale eats the fish, here's the whale's poop, and here you are. That's how that was the first night. They actually did that in the academy. So you are whale poop. You're below whale poop. So don't question anything. Don't say anything. You are here to get crapped on, and keep your head down and just learn and shut the heck up.
Yeah.
Where I don't see that anymore now. It's like, hey, you have value. At least in our organization, you have value. And we're still gonna tease you. You're still gonna be a booter for the first year. You're still gonna clean the crappers. You're still gonna do some stuff. But man, I look at the booters nowadays. I'm just like, oh, you guys have it so easy. Oh, you have no idea. I couldn't come into the day room without getting yelled at once. For a year.
I do agree with you that exists. What I think though is I will hear people say things like, oh, today's generation, and it's very derogatory, and so I wonder if
that's tough, because I'm old school too in that way.
Right.
I do think kids now are softer, and I can say kids because I'm 51. Right. So
is that the breakover? Is 50 the breakover?
I think
so, because I just turned 50 and I'm trying to learn the rules.
I think so. I think it's around 50 because at that, like, you're old enough just not to give a crap anymore or what people think, and you're not afraid to voice it, and then I think you're too old for people to kick your butt too. So otherwise, it gets into the whole geriatric abuse thing. So it's
violating my AARP.
It's a win-win either way. I don't worry about it as much.
Well, okay, so here's the thing. I think that I think we could dance around this idea that that old school, our perspective, generation that came before us, who looked at us when we were young, would be the same way, right?
Sure.
Those freaking young whippersnappers don't have anything. So,
well, you're talking about what, the World War II veterans? The
greatest generation.
I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah. So the question is, what is the value set, right? So, because everybody comes at this from a slightly different perspective,
right?
And so, what is the imperative for these young firefighters, right? As a company officer, what is it that is important to you with your new folks?
First of all, I am an engineer.
I thought you were a captain.
No, I don't want to be a poser here. I'm just an engineer, just a lowly engineer, which is the best spot in the fire service.
Well, this interview's over. I don't want to talk to any engineers.
Yeah, I know. It's just I'm just a freaking. I drove a ladder truck for most of my career, so I am a knuckle dragger at heart. But it's an informal.
100%. Well, I will say this: my engineer is my XO, like
for sure. It's an informal thing. I haven't had any, formal training, but for sure. So get back to the question. I think the kids nowadays coming out are smarter in that they pick up information quicker. However, I do think that they are a little softer. So for them to come in and get ready, I think you got to go out and just grind. You got to. That's where jiu-jitsu is awesome, and I know that you know this, and I don't know how many other of your guests have been involved in that, but do something that's hard. Mm-hmm. Whether it's pushing yourself, physically, that you go and do triathlons, or you push yourself on a mountain bike, or just get out of your comfort zone, and push yourself to kind of like Goggins, embrace the suck. There's a lot, I think, to be said about that. Mm-hmm. I think that now it's like with all it's the participation ribbon generation, right? They all come up thinking that they're awesome, and they are in a lot of things. However, dude, the fire service isn't meant for participation medals, man. I mean, it is above and beyond. It's 110%. There's no quit, and so there's no room for that type of participation, ribbon kind of thing. So I think that's being that old crusty, salty dog that I am. That would be my biggest criticism, is that they kind of come in, they're a little more entitled. Hey, I earned my spot here. No, man, we all started in this spot, and I cleaned the toilets for a year by myself. Shut up. Just like Kent told me, Dave, shut up. Shut up and listen. Now there's some good advice there. Keep your mouth closed. Just because you might think you know, you might not really know, and you might pick up something else. And so just push yourself, get out of your comfort zone, however that may be, because that will teach your brain and your body to endure when you're at your worst day, when it really is hitting the fan and you're in deep trouble, whether you're in a deep anaconda and then the lights are starting to go out and you're in a bad spot, and which happened to me in the World Championships, where I was in a deep choke, and I'm like, oh, you know what? I did good. I came. I showed up. I didn't wuss out. I'm just gonna tap. There's no disgrace in it. And I'm like, my hand came up and I was getting ready to tap on this guy. He was a freaking monster. And I'm like, no, Dave, you're okay. Relax for a second. You did all this training. You drove out to California. It's cost you, gas and time and money. Don't just freaking wuss out here. Hold on. Give it a few more seconds. And sure enough, right then he exhausted himself. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm still alive. I got my wits back together. And needless to say, I swept him. It was one of the best matches in my career where I came back and I ended up winning. So I was that close to tapping out. So, I mean, I know jiu-jitsu people are we draw correlations to life and all this stuff all the time. But dude, that was it. That was the deal, man. And I ended up getting one of my world titles with that.
So I'm going to circle back to that.
Sorry, I know I'm all over the place.
It's okay,
here,
but I'm
man.
going to come back to that because I want to close out on something you said here real quick. You talked about these new guys who come in and they say, "Hey, I've earned this," right? And the thing that occurs to me when people say that is, I go, man, I'm always earning it. Like every day I come in, I'm earning it, and it's not. You can't just say I've earned it and boom, period.
Yeah.
Right. So when you come into a fire company, you have to earn your place. And I know that sounds, there's
Sure.
people may not understand what I mean by that, but it's about building a relationship and trust, right? You expect me to have your 6 on a serious event, and I expect you to have mine. That's not a given. That takes time to build that relationship.
Yeah. What other occupation has that other than law enforcement?
Right.
Or the military,
Right.
Obviously, I wasn't in the military. I have nothing but the biggest respect, but those guys understand it. Yeah, it's hard for the layperson to really get that,
right?
Because of the importance of that, for sure.
So there's a correlate to cleaning the toilet. If I can't trust you to clean the toilet, right?
Yeah.
And to hold that job with some esteem,
That's it.
Then how can I trust you to do anything else?
And that's what I struggle with my kids. I have 5 kids, and my whole I was kind of a jerk to growing up. Like, hey, don't quit. And they. My girls were studs. My boys, they struggled a little harder because just that pushing through. So again, to the younger generation, even if it sucks, keep going. Your life, you're gonna have things in your life that suck. You gotta learn to push through at some point.
Yeah.
And so I earned my spot. Well, yeah. If you can have that mindset of you're always earning your spot, and again, jiu-jitsu. Every day you come in, there's always somebody better.
Yeah.
I've been doing this game for a long time, and I'm a black belt. I could say I've earned my belt, right? How dare you question me or whatever? Yeah, that's great. Right up until a freaking blue belt comes at me and almost takes my head off because they're awesome and they're young and athletic. And if that's not gonna that attitude's not gonna last very long on a real jiu-jitsu mat. Unless I dodge everybody, like a lot of black belts
hide
do.
out.
Yeah. Well, pick and choose my roles with the other old fat people, so that I'm never challenged, right? But then again, as a company officer, is that the kind of people you want on your crew, or the ones that are looking for that easy way out? I don't think that bodes well for the fire service at all.
No, not at all. I think organizationally, it's imperative that we hold a standard, right? And this idea of mediocrity that has crept in, that we allow to seep into different places, is not okay. Like,
there's the reality of life that when you're in a fire or when you're in the back of that ambulance, it doesn't matter what group you associate with or what you think you are. What that patient needs at that point is somebody competent who's willing to not just throw up their hands. I don't know what to do now, and keep on fighting. In a house fire, when the interior conditions suck and a hose line gets kinked and it's go time, what are you going to do? It doesn't matter what political party you are or what any of that stuff matters. You got to frickin' get it done, right? So I think it's a slippery slope, but I don't know.
That's where we have to have measurable standards. Right. You don't want to, organizationally, this is what gets tricky is we don't want to have a variety of standards for different people. When I was in the Marine Corps, you'd have, there was the men's standard, then there was the women's standard, and they had different things they had to do. But the problem is the job, particularly in the fire service and law enforcement, et cetera, the job is the job.
Sure.
The laws of physics apply in that building, right? And that is not going to change for us no matter what happens. Right. And, in the law enforcement area, right? Bad guys are bad guys. They don't care who you are. If you're wearing a badge, they're going to try and take your ass out.
For sure.
So to me, the expectation of the job is, and I will say this: I watched an engineer. I was in the battalion wagon, and I'm watching this engineer on a fire, and she's 5 foot nothing, and she's out there. And this truck it's a La France with a real tall back on it, and she's scrambling over the back of this thing. She gets this ladder, she hooks it. And I've told this story before, so if you've heard it before, bear with me. But she pulls this ladder, wow, gets it to it's barely hanging on, jumps off, gets to the end, pulls it out, takes this ladder, throws it in the front yard, like freaking amazing.
Oh, wow.
She figured out how to adapt.
Nice,
right? And she's a savage. That's the job, right? Somebody has to get the ladder out. I don't care if you're 4'9" or if you're 6'11", right? You have to get that ladder to the people who need it on the fire ground.
Nothing but respect for that.
Yeah. And so to me, there has to be a standard that we hold, and we have to help people. We have to either meet that standard or help people get to that standard.
For sure.
And anything less than that is not
And
acceptable.
You know what? To be fair, because I've been kind of critical of some of these younger kids, we see it on the fire service too, where you get a few years, I move to engineer, and now, I'm in a comfy spot. I really don't have any responsibility, just other than making sure this stuff works and getting everybody to the scene okay. And then they get fat, and then they get lackadaisical, and then, so I don't think my own crap don't stink, right? I have to hold myself accountable too, as a person who's been on 23 years, as a salty engineer. I mean, I'm a U-boat driver right now, okay? That's about the cushiest job in the fire service. It's awesome. But I don't want to be that guy, right? I don't want to be that guy that is out of shape, out of touch, letting my paramedic skills, go completely out the window. I have to be able to hold, if I'm going to hold those kids accountable, I got to hold myself accountable too. And I think that's lacking in some of the guys that have been on a longer time is,
right.
Dude, can you still do the job? You're talking crap about these, her or these new people. How about you, bro? Right. How was your breathe down, or how was your last physical, fitness or agility test or whatever. So it's a two-way street for sure.
Well, and that's a very important point that no matter where, we talk about the fire ground and the laws of physics, right? This job will kill you no matter what, regardless of how seasoned you are. So you have to maintain a level of preparedness, physically, mentally, emotionally, et cetera, to be able to handle every aspect of this job.
Absolutely agree, for sure.
And,
something a lot of people, unless you're in it, that they're not going to understand, especially the long toll, right? Yes, interrupting your sleep patterns is what they're showing now, and how many years it takes off your life, and the HGH, production problems that you have being on shift work, and et cetera, and all that other stuff. Yeah, you better frickin' take it seriously. Even though I've been on over 20 years and I could retire any time, I still got seven more to go here. I better make sure. Everything's tight. Otherwise,
there's so many things, right?
How many times do you see the old timers that retire? And what is the average? I think they say like 6 years.
I would say 5-ish. Yeah.
Yeah.
Under 5.
What? You bust your butt your entire life to have this great drop and all these things in a bass boat and cabin and then you freaking die 5-6 years after you retire. That's horrible.
Yeah.
But sure enough, I see it with these old timers, man. It's sad. I do not want to be that guy.
Yeah, you got to fight for it. And I think that's, there's the job has an imperative that you have to measure up to. And then on top of that, it's the ability to survive a career.
Sure.
And for what purpose? To get out the door healthy and be able to crawl around and hang out with your grandkids and goof off.
I think that's where jiu-jitsu, and I keep coming back to it, like, CrossFit people always talk about CrossFit. Jiu-jitsu guys always talk about jiu-jitsu. I think that's where it's been an invaluable thing in my personal life and in my career, because it helps me to stay motivated, right? Competing in these big tournaments, how many other firefighters have something that they can still drive them or compete in, not professionally. I don't get paid to do it. In fact, it costs a lot of money to do it. But, the value that I get from it to keep me motivated, to keep me healthy, to keep that drive of that competitive fire, right? Yeah. And at 51, still be able to handle business, it's pretty awesome.
So let's talk about jiu-jitsu. Let's dig in for me. How did you get into jiu-jitsu?
All right. So I got hired, and then shortly after I got hired, there was a guy, Marty Solomon, and he was just this, freak. He had all these state powerlifting titles. He was just a stud, right? And he was showing us moves, and that was back when the UFC was just starting, right? The old time UFC where there were no time limits, and Tank Abbott was in there, and it's just these big monsters and
all kinds of crazy
and
dudes.
They frickin' some skinny Brazilian dude in pajamas starts whooping everybody's butts, and I'm like, what is this jiu-jitsu thing, So just like everybody else, I was a fan of the UFC, and a guy started talking about this jiu-jitsu stuff. So he's kind of showing us stuff at the station. He brings some mats in, and he's just beating the snot out of us, and we're like, this sucks. This is stupid. So I finally go in and I try it, and I'm a pretty big guy. I mean, I wasn't as big as I was then. I was skinnier, less husky, and and I went in, and these little skinny nerdy dudes would whoop my butt. I could not understand how, and I was just a chew toy for him. And I'm like, this sucks bad, but it's kind of cool. So I kind of would play around with it a little bit, but I was married. I had young kids, and again trying to go to medic school and just pay the bills. So it was an expense for me, and I messed around off and on with it for a few years, and then kind of started getting a little more serious and competing, and then you really got kind of a taste for it. And being a bigger guy, you were always the one that had to go with the upper belts, right? I never really got to play with the other white belts, so I would just be like, I didn't know what they were doing until it was like, oh, that's a joke. Okay, well, I don't know what that was. What was that? Shut up, let's roll. Oh gosh, that's okay. You've done that 3 times in a row, bro. Let's move on to something else, And they would just beat me up. And I think that's kind of the trial by fire, right? If you could hang through the abuse back in the old days, then you were okay and accepted, and And I did local tournaments. I started competing at some of the bigger they had state tournaments. So I went to Pans as a blue belt, and I won the Pan Americans. And then I went and I did the Worlds. I won the gi and the no gi. The gi is the pajamas, and the no gi is just in like the rash guards and the spandex and stuff. So I won those titles, and then at purple belt, I was a blue belt for like 6 years. I was at a
That's
gym.
the track I'm on.
I was at a gym that was notoriously slow for promotions, and even though I won nationals and worlds and pans, 6 years, man. And so it was tough. But I was kind of starting and stopping too. Life, injuries, fire department, stuff like that. I think that was about the time that I was like, okay, I'm getting old. I was like 34, 35. And there was Rage in the Cage here. It was a promotion here in the Valley, and it was cage fights. And it was amateur cage fights, so you could sign up and fight. And I think the rule for it was no like open hand hitting, standing, or I'm sorry, you could punch, but once you got on the ground, there elbows or punches. You had to hit with open hands for liability issues or whatever. And I'm like, I got to try it, because I was that UFC fan, right? I was like, I don't want to just be one of the posers. Like, I could do that. So I actually,
test my fight out.
I actually was going to put my money where my mouth was. So I did this. I did a cage fight, and I remember I had to go meet with the boxing commissioner because I was 35. I was too old, so I had to get like a one-on-one interview to make sure that I wasn't going to have a freaking heart attack or something, right? And I met with him, got the okay, and I think I fought a kid that was like 23, so almost half my age. And I choked him out in the second round. So I retired.
Take your youth and suck it.
I retired with a perfect record of 1-0. But you know what? Had I known the street cred that would have given me on the fire department, I would have done it a lot sooner. They're like, oh, shoot, Dave did a cage fight. That's badass. Maybe I won't tease him as much, So all of a sudden I had this I wasn't just this goofy, tall, dorky guy anymore. I was like, okay, maybe I won't tease you quite as much. So it worked out really good for me.
Did you get any new recruits? Tell me more about your pajama wrestling.
So with my jiu-jitsu stuff?
No, it says, did anybody come in and go, well, now that you got some street cred, they come in and go, tell us more.
It was kind of a weird deal, because early on in my career as in the fire service, I was into the public education. So we'd go into the schools.
Oh, okay.
As the new guy, as the booter, you always get stuck with the demos, right, at schools and talking about 911 and don't play with matches. And I was always kind of a goofy dude, telling dad jokes and all this stuff. So I always loved it. And I still do. I actually started a children's television show called Sprinkler's Clubhouse, and we had a set, and I had my kids in it and the puppets, and I was a clown.
Okay.
And so I went to this clown school that the fire service put on. Phoenix had what was his name? Sparky. He was a clown. He was a well-known clown, and Phoenix had a program with him on it. Anyways, we ended up doing 23 episodes on life safety skills at Sprinkler's Clubhouse, and they all air on the public access channels and for free on YouTube, and it was great. So I ended up for my fight name, I came out in my blue belt, my gi top, like George St. Pierre back in the day would come out in his gi top, right? I had my blue belt on, and I come out, Dave the Mad Clown Blau, and I'm like, yeah. I thought I was so cool. I had so many of my firefighters and friends there. I was so terrified of losing and looking like an idiot. Yeah. So when I won, I was actually like, oh, thank goodness I didn't lose. More so than I was like, yeah, I won. I was like, oh, thank goodness I didn't lose.
Yeah.
It was, it was interesting. But anyways, what was the question?
I was just
pajama wrestling.
No, I was just curious if guys are apprehensive and making fun, like, oh, he does this jiu-jitsu stuff.
Yeah.
Then you do a cage fight. Yeah. Suddenly you've got some street cred. Do guys come to you now and go,
for sure,
hey, tell me more about that?
For sure. And, I think the UFC did do a good job of that, at seeing the transition. I think the UFC fighters, were utilizing the jiu-jitsu part into their fighting. And I think at that point, it was becoming more accepted. Firefighters are a flaky bunch, man. We're like, oh, squirrel. Oh, that's cool. I'm going to do that. And then they do it for a little bit, and then they fade into the distance, right? Myself included. I can't believe I've stuck with it for as long as I have, but they're a flaky bunch. So guys will come and go. I think really where it's benefited me more is I actually, a few years ago, Tyler Edenhofer was killed working for DPS, he was on probation, and the fight got out, and the suspect got actually his training officer's gun and killed Tyler. So I knew the assistant director of DPS at the time, and so me and another buddy, Josh Stockman, who is a black belt in jiu-jitsu as well, put together a fundraiser course for the family, and so we actually got it certified through the Arizona Post. Law enforcement post, and we did a seminar and they got 3 CE hours for ground fighting for cops.
Nice.
And I think that was my biggest thing, was seeing the overlap from jiu-jitsu to real, MMA fighting, street fighting, and how ill-prepared law enforcement was.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be a cop, right? First off, I never lost that love for cops. And I'm fortunate in Chandler, we've got a great relationship with our law enforcement. We get along really, really well. But to see how ill-prepared these cops are for a ground fight, it makes me frustrated. So yeah, I was able to do that and kind of get my foot in the door there. And since then, I teach women's self-defense. I teach I'm a firearms instructor. And so I love teaching kids and women, empowering them, and using jiu-jitsu for that is huge, and seeing that direct correlation. So now I've even parlayed that into, I just 2 weeks ago went to Texas and did the Gracie GST, Gracie Survival Tactics for law enforcement. I went and did a class out there. So now I'm actually a certified Gracie instructor, and I'm going to go out in 2 weeks to California, Torrance, and learn from Henner and Hedon, the godfathers, and
awesome.
And get the second instruction. But a lot of cop friends. Anytime I roll with law enforcement officers, even in just the pajamas, I'm like, hey man, can you get to your gun? Just to get that thinking, and hey, do you really want to be here? How about if you just underhook this on your gun side and you do this move this way, so they can see the real world application? Because everybody that's like, I'm sure all your firefighters right now, they're like, jiu-jitsu. What, people don't walk around in pajamas, bro, on the street.
Well, so let's talk about that for a second, because the obvious application for law enforcement is, controlling a suspect, right? Perfect transition. Yeah. But what about, how does it help firefighters?
For sure. Back in the day, before cops had tasers,
yeah,
we fought people all the time.
Yeah.
I'm sure you remember, man. It was all the time. So you get a combative patient that's either high on drugs or drunk out of his mind and doesn't want to do what you want to do. Boy, it's the polyester pileup, and you come in and see a bunch of cops wrestling somebody that's on PCP. Or one was this freaking 17-year-old kid who had a party at his parents' house and got into some mushrooms, and this kid was buck naked in his front yard freaking out, and this little scrawny kid was throwing people around. It was amazing. It was incredible. And he's naked, so nobody really wanted to grab hold of anything.
Very reluctant to get in there deep, right?
Put your face somewhere that was in a compromising position. But, yeah, I mean, we fought people all the time. And now it just seems like, I got a taser, I'll tase him. But you've seen that doesn't work all the time. Yeah. So for us to be able to control somebody who is obviously having a bad day. If they're drugged out of their mind, they may not know what they're doing, right? It's not like they're trying to be a butthole to you, but they don't know. And to be able to protect you and your crew, and even to protect them from hurting themselves, or so that you don't just drop the frickin' WWE elbow of justice on their face, which isn't professional, right?
Right.
To be able to control them, or just body position, is huge. And so I'm a huge believer, not just because I drunk the Kool-Aid and all that other stuff. I see the value of it, and to be able to for specifically fire, it's a big deal. It's a huge deal. And when you get some frickin' 300-pound Samoan who's doesn't want to do what you're saying because he's taken 5 somas and he needs to go to the hospital because he's slurring his speech, and you say, okay, buddy, time to get up, and I ain't going. Yeah, you are. We're going to make you. He looks up, looks at all of you, 4 of you, like, you're going to need more people. And you're like, oh, shoot, we might need more people, but to have some confidence in, another tool in your tool belt, right, to be able to handle that situation, I think it adds value to yourself and to your department.
Yeah. I love the fact that with jiu-jitsu, you can actually control somebody without hurting them.
That's the key.
Such a,
right?
To be able to know that you have that tool in your toolkit, so to speak, when you get into a situation, really does add a lot of confidence, like you're saying. And organizationally, I think does provide some sense of risk management, right?
For sure. And I think that that's the big selling point for the Gracie. Whether you think the Gracies are a sellout or not, I think that the program that Henner and Hiron with Gracie University have put out with the GST program, it's amazing. And that's one of their big things is, hey, not only are we protecting the officers from getting hurt, we're actually protecting the suspects from getting hurt. And now they have data that proves that. And so they're able to go into a city manager or a police chief or whatever and say, hey, these are the numbers of lower workman's comp injuries. And then, it's dropped suspect injuries by 50%. I don't know what the numbers are, but they can come through with the numbers, and it's pretty impressive.
Yeah. What's interesting too about it is the individual, and this has been my own personal experience, and I think you might agree. So let me know if you do. Is I think the need to lash out violently goes way down when you know what you're doing.
That's the big thing, right? I mean, how many times you get that firefighter ego, and you're like, it's 3:00 in the morning, right? This is the third time you've been up. It's the same jackass that you've been on. It's the third time. You know him by name, right? Jerry, come on. It's just using the name. If your name is Jerry, I'm sorry. But, come on, man. You got to move or whatever. He wants to get froggy. And now you're pissed. And now you do use too much force and you hurt him, or you like, man, I didn't need to crank that hard. Right. But yeah, you're so amped up and you're so pissed and you don't know. And now elbows are flying and you might take a foot in the face and now it's freaking, you see red and you can't control it.
Right.
Is that really where you want to be? Are you really thinking clearly? And the answer is no. I think to be able to have that knowledge, like, all right, it's not going to be a big deal. Jerry, calm down, buddy. And to be able to have that confidence in yourself that, okay, take a breath. I don't need to beat the crap out of this guy. It's just Jerry. He's just drunk or whatever. Right. And not be that a-hole fireman that or God forbid somebody's videotaping it.
Right.
And makes your headline, and now your city is, now you're in trouble, and your city's in trouble. We've seen videos of it.
Yeah.
Where it's like, screw you. Oh no, no, you didn't. And then you beat their butt, and now your career's over.
Right.
That's not worth it.
Well, and you're adding a black eye to the entire fire service, to public safety at whole as a large, right?
Sure, and that's that big selling point for the cops. But I think it's pertinent for fire as well, obviously, because we are dealing with combative patients before we can call for PD and their response time. We've all been there. If you've been on the job for more than 10 years, you probably have had at least one or two where you're like, oh crap, and you're sitting on this guy or whatever, and are you doing it well enough that they're going to survive? Have sudden, post-incarceration, hyperthermia or whatever. That was the buzzword there for a long time. Sudden incarceration, I don't know.
I can't think of it either.
It's where their body temperature spikes up and they cook their brain and they die.
Yeah.
And that's a real thing. So are you going to be able to recognize that? Are you going to be calm enough that you can still look for that stuff instead of being like, you deserve this, you motherfricker, or whatever.
Yeah.
It's nice to be able to have that confidence. It's the same thing as when I'm carrying a firearm, off duty, and somebody cuts me off. Whew, I see red, right? I want to frickin', no, you didn't, and I'm like, calm down. You're carrying a gun, you got that added responsibility, right? And so, and sometimes when I'm carrying that, it is a check for my anger and my attitude. Like, okay, I can't be a frickin' go off half cocked here because I have that responsibility. It's the same thing when we put on the blue T-shirt, right?
Yeah.
You have that responsibility to be professional, take care of your patient, even if they're being a jerk for the third time that night or whatever. You got to still be professional.
Yeah. Well, we have a tendency to take it personally, right?
Yeah.
And it's not personal. This person is, this individual is not personally attacking you, Dave, or you, Rain. Like, it is not about you.
Well, but then you're with your buddies too, right? You don't want to get punked by frickin' Charles for the third time. oh, he just called you out, Dave. Oh, you're his little, you know what? Oh, and they're kind of like your buddies in high school goading you on.
Yeah. Yeah, we could be our own worst enemies in that regard, huh?
I'm not going to talk about that. Yeah, no. It happens, but it's not very professional. But I think it's real world, right? We get comfortable, and yeah, there's a lot of dynamics that people just don't understand that go into the fire service or law enforcement, right? They think it's just so cut and dry, right? You just, how hard can it be? You freaking take a hose off your truck, you put the water on the fire, and it goes out, right? They don't know about the 95% of our calls that we're going into domestics or sick kids or dying grandparents, or now with the whole COVID thing. Holy cow. That's a whole nother ball of wax, right? I don't even know if you want to open that can of worms, but going from always being the good guy for my whole career, right? Oh, thank God the fire department's here, to dun, 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 dun. Now I'm the Grim Reaper, right? Oh, shoot, it's the fire department. They're here to take Grandpa away.
We never see him again.
And then you're like, yeah, sir. I spend, if you've been on any amount of time, you're kind of talking people out of going to the emergency room that don't need it, right?
Yeah.
And now you're like, yeah, sir, you probably do need to go to the hospital. You're really sick. Can my wife come? No, sir, you can't. She can't. So you're like knowing in your mind, you're taking this poor old guy that's been married to his wife for 50 years. She's never going to see him again. He's going to go to the hospital, die in a windowless room all by himself on a ventilator. You're pulling him out. Grandkids are in the front yard watching, Firefighter Dave take their grandpa away to die. That really was a different deal for me this last year.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many other firefighters have experienced that, but that was a different deal for me. That was, I think anybody that's been on can say that the job has changed over the years, but not like it's changed in the last year.
Yeah. I think it's really dramatically changed for the world in general, sure. Right? And regardless of where people stand on politics, whatever side of this mess you're on, it has become a giant shit show for all of us, right?
It's been something that I would not have ever guessed, how it would be. And exactly, I get into it on social media just like everybody else on politics or vaccines or masks or whatever, and it's like, dude, I don't think this is a joke. I'm on the front lines here. Whatever, you think or I think, you weren't there, where I had to comfort a 13-year-old boy that came in and found his 46-year-old dad dead in the bed, probably from COVID. Right. Healthy guy. So I'm not discounting any of this, but that's a bummer. Sorry to bring it down. So
yeah, thanks for taking us to that low spot.
All right, on to other fun things. But it's a part that people don't understand. So again, here we go back to jiu-jitsu, being able to have that outlet, to come and deal with that, just like guys in the military with PTSD, to be able to come and be on the mats and no politics and keep myself in shape, give myself an avenue to compete and push myself, just embrace the suck, okay, and get my butt whooped by all these young freaking kids trying to rip a big 250-pound black belt's head off, right? And then learn. You talked about, education and continually learning. Dude, I can't remember what I had for breakfast yesterday. My brain, I'm seriously have early Alzheimer's or something because I can't freaking remember anything. So to come in here and push myself to learn new moves, to, just like a white belt and have that humble mentality, I think it's huge.
So let me ask you this. So if you are, because I think it's amazing if somebody is at 20 years old, they stumble into jiu-jitsu, that's great. I came to jiu-jitsu.
Jiu-jitsu? Bless you.
Hold on. I came to jits at 46 years old.
Okay. And that's late, bro.
Right?
Yeah.
Do I stand a chance? Am I going to be okay?
Yes. Yes.
So I feel like
that's what's unique about it, man.
Well, I got to be honest, man. Like, it was life-changing for me. And it was a really amazing opportunity it was just an amazing series of events. And then I stumble in and I'm starting training jiu-jitsu and I'm like, where have I been? Where's this been my whole life, right?
For sure.
Falling in love with the sport. And so what's the, I mean, how does somebody get into jiu-jitsu in a healthy,
it's a great question.
way?
So, I mean, here we are talking about, you hear Joe Rogan talking about jiu-jitsu, Jocko Willink and all these guys, that there's no better thing that you can put your youth in than to jiu-jitsu. That's not just for young people. It is, I tell people, it is an interesting Kool-Aid to drink because it checks off so many boxes for so many people. I'm actually looking at opening up my own gym here in the next year. So I'm looking forward to that. At 51, bro.
It's going to be here in the East Valley so far.
Yeah, hopefully, somewhere.
Where the rest of your life is.
I'm looking at Gilbert, hopefully. Gilbert, East Valley somewhere. But it's never too late. That's what's great about it is our gym here at Aries, Arizona, right? We've got young studs to old farts like me that have been doing it forever. We've got women, we've got children, we've got moms and single girls and college student boys and ex-D1 wrestlers and, the whole gamut, right? Conservatives, liberals, people in between, whatever. Jiu-jitsu doesn't care about your sex, your religion, your politics, none of that. You come in here, you sweat just the same, you get your butt kicked just the same, and you shake hands. You get the martial arts aspect of the respect, bowing on and off the mats, which is cool, right? It is a martial art, so you get that respect of your elders, of putting your time. Hey, I'm a black belt. I think I deserve a certain amount of respect, just like a 30-year firefighter deserves a certain amount of respect, right? But do I expect it? No. I got to be humble about it and be a good ambassador for it, whatever. But yeah, it doesn't matter any of that stuff. You can come in, you can learn, you can get physically fit. You're learning a real-world skill that could benefit you and your family. You're getting a team aspect. So even though you're only fighting one other person, if you're competing, you compete with your team. You got your teammates there screaming, yelling for you, win or lose. It's awesome. You're putting yourself out of your comfort zone, like I talked about, doing hard things. You go out and compete. People are just like my cage fight, right? I'm like, oh, geez, I hope I don't freaking make an idiot out of myself. Same thing when I go and compete at, state tournaments here. Like, oh, yeah, Big Dave, he might get his ass kicked, and it has happened. Yeah. At Worlds, in the finals, I get foot locked as a black belt, and Jiu-Jitsu Magazine's right there. Takes a picture of it, and me going, ah! And the comments as I'm icing my foot at 3 a.m., kind of crying a little bit because I was so close to that last title that I don't. It's the only world title I don't have as black belt gi, and the comments, really. A master's black belt doesn't know not to cross his feet, or costly mistake. The best one, though, was only cross them if you're awesome. I was like, okay, that one's pretty good. But, the guy put me there, and it was a white belt mistake, but he put me there. I made a mistake, and it was the worst beat of my career after 18 years of competing, right? So, yeah, where else are you going to get that? Where else are you going to go and challenge yourself? Where are you going to go and put yourself on the line other than in a house fire or, in a super stressful situation, and then have that camaraderie after the fact, going out and hanging out with your teammates and enjoying each other's company. And, I think that's why people talk about it kind of like a religion, because it does check off so many boxes for so many different people.
Right.
It's crazy. It's weird actually when you stop and think about it, because I'm like, am I in a cult?
Checks all the boxes.
Yeah. The good thing is that they don't ask for any other money than just my monthly dues. But it's incredible. Did that answer a question, or am I rambling?
Yeah, no, both. Yes.
Yeah, you didn't know what you were getting into. When
No,
you had me
it's
on
good.
Here.
No, that was my question. You answered it directly, which is this for everyone, right? I said, hey, how does a 46-year-old start this process?
Yeah.
I mean, I know how I did it,
yeah.
But I think about, in terms of just the average person getting the gumption to just walk in and try it out.
Yeah, I'm sorry, to get back to it. Yes, I have referred cops to it. People, what about this gym? What about that gym? You know what? There are great gyms everywhere. I am friends with a lot of the owners. I don't care what team or affiliate. go where you will train. Yeah. That's the key.
Yeah. Do you recommend shopping around a little bit?
I do. Why not?
Try
get different vibes. There are different vibes in different gyms.
So let me ask you this though. So I feel like now as a salty blue belt, I could go anywhere and get a feel for the gym pretty quickly, right? Because I've been training long enough. But I think about the person who's never trained at all.
Sure.
How are they going to find
It's daunting.
that first mix?
It's scary for sure. You, start asking around. Start asking, if you're a firefighter, start asking at the station. Everybody has an opinion at the fire station, right? But ask your friends. Find out. Just because it has Gracie in the name doesn't necessarily mean it's the best for you. There are lots of, ours is not affiliated with the, it's kind of like religious sects out there, right? And it used to be back in the day, man. It was worse, like, right? You do not cross lines, right? Don't cross the streams. It was very frowned upon to go to different gyms. I think that's kind of gone by the wayside now. You can go and check out gyms. You're not going to get your butt whooped. But yeah, there are different feels. Like I said, here at our gym, we got a lot of, it's kind of a good mix of people who want to compete and people who just want to come and, hang out and learn and exercise. I introduced a daughter's friend, kind of an older guy, heavy, out of shape. I didn't think he told me he was going to puke in warm-ups. And so I thought, no way, this guy is not going to last. And sure enough, you think this stud's, going to kill it, and he leaves after a couple weeks, and this guy has stuck it out through a hip replacement, and he's lost 30 pounds, and he's not a inherently athletic guy. But man, he's gutted it, and he's getting good. But he's a middle-aged man, professional man, and he's just kind of got that dad bod, and he's doing great. And is he going to be a world champ? Probably not. But I don't think he wants to. I don't think he cares. But it's great for the person who wants to get a feel for it, push themselves, put yourself into a position where you're got another sweaty human being on top of you and trying to maul you and choke you unconscious. That's getting out of your comfort zone a little bit, right? Yeah. Or learning how to roll with a 110-pound woman without, I'm 250, right? And not hurt her, right? Being careful and using my technique and controlling the little wily 160-pound little frickin' freak who, is going spider monkey on me, and just surviving. And there are guys that it's crazy. But being able to do it at an advanced age, safely, so that you don't incur those injuries, having a gym that does take that carefully and has that mindset of, hey, we're here to have fun, learn, take care of each other. Because there are some gyms you walk into, it's like, this is my house. Yeah. Bring the pain here. It's like,
I had an incident.
Don't want to go there.
I had an incident early on. I was a couple years into training, and had this dude who was really kind of aggro MMA.
Sure.
And he got me in an arm bar and just racked it. Ugh. And I was, like, as he got the arm bar, I'm like, tap, 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 tap. And he just, did I hurt you? And I'm like, you know what, dude?
Yeah.
We're not going to talk anymore.
Yeah, that's it.
And what's interesting to me and what really irritates me is that guy just, he was gone. He was gone with a week. Like, sure. He just moved on with his life. And I ended up having this like debilitating tendonitis for like 3 years.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing, because those kinds of aggro guys that are just muscleheads and are crazy out of control usually don't last long in the sport, because they're not welcome in a place, in an environment that is conducive to that real teaching and that learning. If you're hurting people, this isn't the sport for you.
No. Yeah, it's interesting is what I've learned over the last few years is how to gauge somebody's energy. Right? If they're coming at me with kind of out of control energy, I know the difference, right? And I try to tell guys, you are empowered to set the tone.
Sure.
Right? Tell me how you want to roll, man. Like if you're gonna come at me real hard, you're gonna receive in kind. Like I'm gonna control that
for sure.
And that's a
That's the most dangerous thing, right? Is to really roll with a white belt, a spazzy white belt.
Yeah.
That's the most dangerous to me as a black belt who's been doing it for years and can handle myself. They're the scariest because they're so anxious to show that they can do something to me. And it's like, dude, calm down, man. You get whacked in the elbow, in the face with an elbow or get kneed. And it's like, all right, bro, this isn't the UFC, man.
Right.
We're just hanging out. We're having a good time. And so gyms that instill that early on into the new people, huge.
Yeah.
So you'll get that in different gyms. So yeah, go check out different places. Different instructors have different styles. You'll get some that are heavy competition schools. You'll get some that are strictly self-defense based, and they're not really into the competition. So I think they all have their different value. And it's just kind of what meshes with your personality, what meshes with your schedule, what meshes with your, their different prices and your income. That's a factor, of course, but just kind of what your goals too. You just want to hang out and check it out, or are you? It's not like you have to make a commitment to be long term. But hey, I'm 51. I still see the value. I trained this morning. I trained last night. I train differently than I used to. I'm a lot more careful and deliberate. But yeah, we have to go to work the next day. Even the competitions that we're at, hey bro, let's take care of each other. We both have work tomorrow. Yeah. Okay, cool. So you get that respect of other professionals that you're not going to sit back on that arm bar and really hip it as hard as you can. You're going to get the position, control it, and give the guy a chance to tap. And then if you don't, you're going to creep it, and then if he doesn't tap, he's a grown adult. He made his choice.
Right.
But a lot of times in training, I get people and they don't know they're in trouble, and so I just let it go. I don't need that tap to make me sleep better at night. I don't do this sport to stroke my ego, because I'll tell you right now, there's a certain black belt whose name is Jonathan Van Buren. So he'll tap me 4 times, 5 times in 6 minutes, and he's 180-pound hippie kid, and he just whoops me. And I think I've caught him like 4 times in the last 6 years, and he remembers each one. But he doesn't try to hurt me, and that's the thing, man. There's always somebody better.
Hey, well, that is one of the beauties of training jiu-jitsu is that the humility that we are given in that process, right? Recognizing that there's so much that you don't know, and that there's always somebody who's more knowledgeable and can apply that knowledge more effectively.
For sure.
And of course I see that in kind of all things. As we're talking about,
aren't those the kind of people that you want to surround yourself with, though? Like in business, or in the fire service, or in your crew, your leadership, your captain, your BC. When you bid that truck, isn't that kind of, if you have any self-worth, isn't that kind of what you want to surround yourself with? Are those people that are freaking awesome, that can help you raise your game up and teach you?
Yeah, challenge you and bring you to a new level.
I've been so
100%.
fortunate to be at this gym and in the fire service and have great mentors. And still, as I'm getting ready to open my own gym, I have friends that are mentoring me and teaching me along the way, that are helping me not step on those landmines. And how blessed am I to have those kind of people in my life? They're worth their weight in freaking gold.
Yeah.
Because believe it or not,
totally
I think I know everything, but I really don't.
And that's the beauty, man, is that none of us actually know. The more I learn, the more I realize that there's so much I don't know, right? And let me ask you. We'll wrap up. No, we've been going. It's good, man. I love it. What is one like life lesson or a quote or something that always comes back to your mind that is a guiding principle for you, or a truth?
Ooh, put me on the spot. For me, is to be humble, right? I think I'm pretty awesome, but I'm really not. Like I said, there's always somebody better. There's always somebody smarter. But it doesn't mean I'm not trying to become better or become the person that I have envisioned for myself, right? I don't want to settle. So I'm always trying to push myself, always trying to learn, even at my advanced age, even when it's freaking hard for me to memorize anything anymore. I still have goals. I still want to open up a business. I still want to get a pilot's license. I still want to push myself, right? There's so many things. Life is so awesome. And you can get bogged down in the politics and in the world and in COVID and whatever, your own life crap that's going on, because life's not fair. But I think that's probably the best and the worst thing about the fire service for me, is seeing people on their worst day, seeing bad things happen to good people for no reason, right? It just happens, right? So to realize that life is fleeting, it's finite, and to enjoy it. It's meant to be enjoyed and to learn and experience, without trying to sound like a frickin' Dalai Lama here or anything, man. I've got a good life. I'm blessed with a great family, 5 wonderful kids, 2 grandkids, a great job. Does it suck sometimes? Yeah, but if I dwell on it, it's going to suck worse. So I look at the positives, and jiu-jitsu helps me to do that. My family helps me to do that. All my other activities helps me to do that. But just take advantage and enjoy it. Enjoy the ride and challenge yourself, and look at all the amazing things that there are to do and learn and experience. So that's maybe my 2 cents. Maybe it's all baloney.
I'll take that as a whole. That's a nickel right there. So in closing, Dave, where can, if people want to reach out to you, if they want to connect, if they want to train with you, where can they catch you on social media?
I don't have anything concrete set up. We're still in the planning stages and development, but my name is David Blau. They can contact me at firemandave4232. I know it's very original. firemandave4232@gmail.com if they have any questions or they want to chat about anything, or they can on social media. I'm Dave. I think it's David BL. You can Facebook me or.
Right on. And I'll put those in the show notes. So,
not that I have anything interesting to give anybody, but maybe you guys want to talk crap, and that's okay. It's fair.
That's good enough. Thanks, Dave.
All right, thanks, bud.
That's all we have for today. Thanks for tuning in. If you're enjoying this podcast, get over to whatever platform you like to listen on, subscribe. This podcast will drop in the middle of the night when you least expect it. Additionally, get on over to Apple Podcast, rate and review the podcast. Feel free to shoot me an email. Any feedback that you provide is valuable for me in helping us build this product to be more in tune with what you want to hear. Lastly, take the lessons that you're learning here from the people that are sharing their knowledge, imbue it into your life. Remember, there are no shortcuts. So let's go on out there and get some.